What actually is a legal guardianship? Because Wendy Williams is fighting to get out of hers. We find out what it is and how you actually end one, plus the defamation case that Drake has filed against his own record label. This is Fame Under Fire. I'm Anoushka Mutanda-Dougherty. Make sure you subscribe to the BBC Sounds YouTube channel so you never miss a thing, and keep sending us your questions at +44 330 678 1114. That's +44 330 678 1114. What happens if you are diagnosed with a disease and then some of your rights are taken away?
I am not cognitively impaired, you know what I'm saying? No, but I feel like I am in prison.
That's media personality and broadcaster Wendy Williams, who is fighting her guardianship, speaking to The Breakfast Club. And then later, we're taking a look at the defamation lawsuit that Drake has filed against his own record label.
This is all happening while Drake and UMG are prepping for the biggest release, or the most important release of his career, with Iceman. And it's kind of like the equivalent of arguing with your boss in the parking lot before you have to give a company-wide presentation.
Later, Professor Mark Anthony Neal will be back to talk to us about rap battles, but first we have our resident criminal defense attorney, Shaun Kent, joining from South Carolina. Hi, Shaun.
Hey, Anoushka, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Now, Shaun couldn't do us yesterday because he's got a real job. How was that, Shaun?
A lot of work to do.
Yeah, that's why they pay you the big bucks. But we are, first of all, I'm a poor country lawyer. I'm just waiting for that. I'm poor. You got $70,000 on your wrist. Please don't chat to me.
We're starting humble with country lawyer.
Yeah.
You forgot humble.
We're starting with Wendy Williams. You know who Wendy Williams is. But maybe if you're a little younger, Wendy Williams is a veteran broadcaster. She's an entertainment journalist that everybody knew. Her show, Hot Topics on the Wendy Williams Show, it was like appointment viewing. She was known for being quite controversial. She'd stir the pot a little bit. And if you tuned in, you'd probably see her saying, "How you doing?" Shaun, can you do "How you doing"?
Can we talk?
Yeah. Clap if you love Beyonce. Clap if you hate Beyonce. That's very Wendy Williams.
So now, guess who's jealous of Adele? Beyonce. According to In Touch magazine, Beyonce feels overshadowed by Adele and knows that she can't compete. Well, here's my thought. You don't have to compete. Adele is great, and you're great.
We could never get away with saying that. We'd have to put a right of reply into Beyonce saying, "Beyonce, Miss Knowles, do you feel overshadowed by Adele?" But that's what I mean. Wendy could get a little messy. She'd beef with P. Diddy. She'd beef with 50 Cent. She'd find new and original ways to approach the saying of people's names.
So there's a woman that you know as
Her name's Dua Lipa.
Yeah.
But you call her Dula Peep.
Dula Peepa.
Her name's Dua Lipa, but you call her Dula Peep.
Dula Peepa, I'm sorry.
This is what I mean. Wendy was kind of cemented in the public consciousness as somebody who caused a bit of controversy. She had her show, she had her investigations that she was doing. But now, most of what we hear about her is about her trying to get out of this guardianship that she's in. Now, we hear guardianship, conservatorship all of the time, Shaun. We heard about it with Britney Spears. We hear about it with Wendy. Sometimes it feels like we only hear about it when it's to do with celebrities. What actually are guardianships and conservatorships?
Okay, so first of all, guardianship and conservatorship, they are actually interchangeable words. It depends on what state you are. Because Wendy Williams is in New York, it is a guardianship. If it's in California, Britney Spears was dealing with a conservatorship. The long and short, what makes this case so interesting is the way it started is Wendy Williams was banking with bank Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo noticed from her financial advisor that there were some weird things going on with her money, if you will. And so in their rules and their regulations and the things that you sign when dealing with the bank, they can flat out tell the court, look, we're worried. We're worried that someone can take advantage of her. So court, so that someone doesn't take advantage of her, take her money, so she's not out at 4 o'clock in the morning trying to buy an elephant. Believe it or not, Anoushka, I actually did that once. That's why I bring that up. But if she's not out trying to buy something crazy in the middle of the night, that actually happened. The bank can come in and say, court, we want you to do something. So they went to the court, petitioned the court. They said, we're worried about Wendy, and they got a guardianship, and they had it a court-appointed guardian, which is also rare because usually it's a family member. but they got a court-appointed guardian and said, you are in charge of looking at her money to make sure she is not doing anything untoward that's going to hurt her down the road.
Her show ended in 2022, and in 2023, her care team said she had been diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia and aphasia. She spoke to TMZ in February this year from her assisted living facility.
I am not allowed to go out. I can call you, but you can't call me. It's like I went from, 1,000 to 0 once I got involved with this guardian situation. In the last 30 days, I went out twice for my teeth, you know what I'm saying? And I want my life back.
Now, Wendy has said that her guardian, her appointed guardian, needs to get off her neck. She's made it very clear that she's unhappy about this guardianship. But a judge has just upheld that she needs to remain with her guardian following medical tests. We don't hear guardianships, conservatorships spoken about in a very positive light, Shaun. Often it's tantamount to, I'm being restricted, my freedoms are being restricted. Is there room for abuse with the way that these are set up?
Absolutely. But it's a catch-22. Do we want a system in which, history is replete, whether it's America, whether it's London, wherever it is, on very rich people doing a whatever happened to, and then we look back in time and God, they went through all of their money. How come nobody was there to protect them? And so that's what the system is designed for, that if some of these people are acting off, if you will, then the court can step inside and make sure we're trying to protect you from yourself. And that's the point of a guardianship. If the court feels you are a danger to not only yourself, but potentially others, we can step inside and get involved. Usually, a guardianship started because the family member, people who know you, people who love you, are looking at you and say, Mama ain't acting right. Mama is spending a bunch of money. People are coming in and taking advantage. Mama's 84 years old, and now she's got a 22-year-old boyfriend who's writing checks for Cadillacs. The court says, we've got to stop so this woman doesn't lose all of her money. What's interesting in the Wendy Williams situation, unlike Britney Spears and others, is a bank got involved. A bank who has no relationship emotionally, but has a fiduciary relationship, said, we're worried about Wendy. We don't want her to go through all of our money. Court, get involved. And a court who is supposedly neutral and detached looked at it, looked at her medical records, met with folks and said, something's going on. But for some reason, the court got involved and said, let's stop this. You asked the question, is it replete or want for misuse? Absolutely. And here's the other thing is, if you think about it, if just doing wild, crazy, unnatural things was the reason you should get a guardian, you don't ever hear about a lot of men getting guardianships. But you talk about Wendy Williams and Britney Spears and things of that, and there's like, oh, this poor young lady can't control her finances, let's get a guardianship. It's a weird situation if you look at it.
So the bank flagged this, which is not normal. It would normally be the family. And then a court who you say is supposed to be neutral said, yes, we agree with this. And she has what's called an elder law attorney. That's her conservator. What does that mean?
Well, everybody gets a lawyer in this situation. Technically, Wendy has a lawyer. Wendy's lawyer has a lawyer. And so the system makes sure that every single person in this situation has lawyered, because there is a checks and balances. Everybody has a separate role in protecting Wendy Williams' rights. But the funny part about it is, and why everybody's so concerned, is you have like 13 lawyers protecting Wendy, and Wendy is saying something completely different. Wendy's saying, I don't want you people. I don't need you people. Why does everybody keep appointing these lawyers for me?
But when we hear Wendy speaking, she's talking about requesting an iPad that she's been denied. She wants to go certain places. She says her movement is being restricted. Is that within the remit of somebody who's supposed to be keeping an eye on her finances?
The court can put whatever restrictions they want on it. That's the thing about the court. The one thing that was wild about me, I don't know if you saw, she had to ask permission to go see her 94-year-old father's birthday. She had to ask permission from the court-ordered guardian. That's when it gets a little crazy. Now, the wild part is the records are sealed for the most part. So what we don't know is why the court put those types of restrictions. Or is she doing situations? Is she doing such harm when she goes to these places to her own devices that could hurt her and hurt others? We don't know that yet because we don't know what's in those filings. But yes, to answer your question, you don't usually see it this extreme unless they're very concerned that it's not just finances, it's her personal being that they can't control.
But what about your amendments? You guys love your amendments. They're enshrined. They're codified. What about the 14th Amendment? Freedom of movement, liberty. Doesn't this impede upon that? She's a US citizen.
Absolutely. But you know, the one thing we're also worried about is each state can create systems, and I'm glad you asked that, and each state can create different systems to protect their own individual citizen. So New York has created this to say, we are more concerned about your individual rights and making sure other people don't take advantage. Because at the beginning, if we don't have this situation, how do we feel if all of a sudden somebody just goes to Wells Fargo and writes themselves a check for $2 million and said, Wendy Williams said I could. And they call Wendy Williams. She said, write him a check. Go ahead, write him a check. And then later she brings a lawsuit against Wells Fargo and says, you shouldn't have done that. You know I wasn't of my right frame of mind. If you've ever made an order on a credit card or done something out of the ordinary, and all of a sudden your bank has said, we are putting a hold on that transaction, Anoushka, because it seems fraud to us, we're like, thank you. It's the same situation, but it's much more extreme.
When I do the big weekly shop, they're like, suspicious activity going out of your account.
That's what happened when I tried to buy an elephant.
You see, this is what I want to ask you about this just quickly, because you're coming back to us later to talk about Drake and Kendrick Lamar, but I know you don't drink. I know you don't drink, and I know you don't do any substances of any type. So you were trying to buy an elephant of your own free will, completely coherent and cognizant of everything around you.
The only thing I will disagree with is the word try. I actually bought said elephant and received a call asking what zoo they wanted it delivered to. And when I said I just wanted it sent to my office, it was a whole thing.
Maybe you need to be in a guardianship.
But you see but here's the wild part about that. If I was a woman, maybe, or if I was people would come in, it's like, what is that crazy person doing? But Shaun does is like, oh, that's so laughable.
So you're saying that these are inherently misogynistic?
Absolutely. I mean, look through our history, and this is just me saying, but look through our history. Look who are the ones who are controlling. Look at our history in the United States of poor little woman can't control her finances, so let's step inside and make sure we can have control over her. You don't hear about a lot of guardianships when it comes to men. You just don't.
Before we get into what we've heard back from Wendy and her team, is this a thing that's quite common throughout the country? Because we obviously hear about it when it's relating to celebrities, but is this happening, in every other home in America?
It is definitely common in the United States, Anoushka. It happens a lot more than you think. Usually, though, it doesn't happen with really rich folks. What ends up happening is somebody getting a Social Security check or a smaller amount of money, and then we have family members who might be taking advantage of that check. Our senior citizens in certain situations are relying on their families, and what ends up happening is some family member comes and says, hey, grandpa's been dating this little old woman, and we're worried he's not able to make his own decisions. We're worried about his dementia kicking in. Grandpa's out here changing his will, and we're worried this is happening. So we go to the court, and we provide proof that he is not of his own fit state and mind. We're worried that this is going to affect him down the road. So this does happen. It's just very rare when you see the famous people situation, but it happens more than you think because we do worry about people taking advantage.
Now, we asked for statements from Wendy Williams and her lawyer, Joe Tasapina. We also asked for a statement from Sabrina Morrissey, who's the conservator, and none of them have got back to us yet. In April, Tasapina told TMZ, I've spoken to Wendy Williams, I'd say for hundreds of hours over the last couple of months. She's as Wendy Williams as she was 10 years ago. She's as Wendy Williams as she was when she had one of the best shows in television. She's absolutely capable of hosting a talk show or doing whatever she wants to do. Now, Sabrina Morrissey previously told Vanity Fair earlier this year that Wendy Williams' living arrangements and level of care came from medical recommendations, saying it's not something I decided. Shaun, you're going to be back with us later talking about Drake and Kendrick Lamar and Universal Music Group and this defamation lawsuit. So we'll see you in a bit.
I'll see you soon.
Now, we told you a few weeks ago on this program, don't take streaming figures at face value. 100 million streams doesn't mean that 100 million people are going to go out and buy your concert ticket or your merch. In 2019, the CEO of Spotify, Daniel Ek, said that around 40,000 songs are added to the platform every day. That is an awful lot of noise to cut through. So it really takes a lot to have a hit, like a hit, like Thriller or Happy, Pharrell's Happy, or like the Macarena, something that's everywhere. But last year, Kendrick Lamar's diss track, Not Like Us, did all of that and then some. With 1.62 billion streams on Spotify, 385 million views on YouTube, and billions of views on TikTok, it surpassed everybody's measure of success. I mean, he performed it at the Grammys, where he won in all 5 categories where he was nominated. He performed it at the Super Bowl, where it got its largest audience ever with 133.5 million viewers. And then he did the LA show, the landmark one, the Pop Out, Kenny and Friends, where he performed the track 5 times.
As selected by 13,000 voting members, the Grammy goes to Kendrick Lamar.
Nothing more powerful than rap music. I don't care what it is. We are the culture. It's gonna always stay here and live forever. And to the young artists, like my man Punch say, I just hope you respect the art form. That's all. Respect the art form. Get you where you need to go. All right, salute. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all.
Now, all of that is well and good, except for the fact that throughout the song, Kendrick repeatedly claims that Drake, YMCMB alumni, one of the most commercially successful rappers in the world, is a paedophile. And Drake has filed a whole lawsuit about that, which we're going to get into later. But now I'm joined by Professor Mark Anthony Neal, who runs African and African American Studies at Duke University in North Carolina. Hi, Professor.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Look, we're talking about this, Not Like Us, which went everywhere. I mean, this was the hit. But included in that diss track were really serious allegations. Rap battles are nothing new. They're really central to the culture, and it's quite often a way that an MC can kind of prove themselves. But has there been a shift in what they focus on? Previously about your skill or your record label, and now it's like heinous accusations or personal details or exposés about your life.
It's important to remember that this is not a new phenomenon, right? Hip hop rap music was founded in the rap battle. And at those early days, right, I'm thinking about classic ones like Kool Moe Dee and LL Cool J as being one example. Common and Ice Cube going back 25 years ago, though if you look at the two of them now, you would never believe that they were ever in any kind of battle. It was always about reputation and your reputation as a rapper. And quite honestly, in these battles, a lot of rappers took L's, they took losses, and they kept it moving. Right. Their response was always going to be in the quality of the work. Right. Their reputation as a rapper was what was at stake. What changes now is the amount of money that is in the entertainment industry as related to hip hop and rap culture. Now you're not just simply attacking someone's reputation. You are attacking their brand, right? And their ability to make money beyond the studio, beyond the records. And I think as money has become such a more important part of it, not just for the rappers themselves, but also for the corporations who were invested in them as brands, including their record labels. It has created a context that when you go after someone, you really do have to go out after someone, right? You have to dead them, right? As they would say about 10 years ago, because they are a threat to your brand.
So it's more so character assassination than actually commenting on the quality of their skills.
Oh, there's no question, right? Now it rings a little differently with Drake and Kendrick because no one ever thought about Drake as having the kind of rap skills that Kendrick had, right? I mean, that's why that beef was so strange, right? Because it really wasn't. The pretext for this is always that I'm a better rapper than you. Drake is a different kind of phenomenon because while he wasn't necessarily the greatest rapper, he sold an incredible amount of music, right? He was one of the best-selling rappers of the last decade. And so in that regard, right, part of this battle was that, how am I, if you're Kendrick, right, how am I this great rapper and this guy who is subpar, right, has become the face of the industry, the face of what hip hop is. So in those contexts, right, the battle takes on a little different kind of color.
Okay, but let's look at actually what some of the things that Kendrick said. He called him a certified pedophile. He said in that very famous line, "You're trying to strike a chord and it's probably A minor," which I think is maybe everybody's favorite bit. "I hear you like them young. You better not ever go to cell block 1. If you're talking to him, you better hide your little sister from him." The cover art for the single was an aerial shot of Drake's house with symbols that are associated with sexual predators on apps where you can see where sex offenders are. So it was very clear what Kendrick was saying. We have a response from Drake. Drake responded directly to the allegations on his track, The Heart Part 6. Drake is not a name that you go and see on no sex offender list. I've never been with no one underage. So he directly responded to it. But what I'm saying here is, if we're getting into territory where it becomes about character assassination, less so than skill, even though Kendrick is an extremely skilled rapper, we all know that. But you're focusing more on what he's alleging than the talent or the pen or the double entendres or any of those things. You're focusing on the allegations. So have we moved into a space now where as long as you come out and you say something massively shocking, you're going to win the rap battle regardless of skill?
Yeah, and it's an interesting question, right? And I don't necessarily want to attach Kendrick to the politics of the moment, right? But we are in a moment in terms of media and culture where, the truth is open-ended, right? Many folks can make allegations about anything, right, at this particular time and not get called to the carpet for it. So in that regard, it's not surprising that hip hop is now part of this particular moment, right? Where truth is under assault. Expertise doesn't matter, right? The facts don't matter, as we're seeing here just in terms of the political realities here in the US. So in that regard, what's happening in hip hop is not necessarily unusual.
Now, have there been things that have perhaps historically been off the table? I'm thinking here to Drake's previous big beef that he had where his son was exposed. We didn't know he had a son, and then we found out about Adonis through a rap battle. Was there a point where kids were off the table, family was off the table, and you could speak about certain things and not other things?
You would think in the best case scenario that folks would leave families out of it. Even with Nas and Jay-Z 25 years ago, there were questions about a quote unquote girlfriend slash baby mama, and a lot. And Jay-Z often told the story about being on a radio show and going a little too far, and his mother calling into the station and telling him, I didn't raise you like that. So I think those have always been questions, right? But again, the rap battle is foundationally part of, this practice of the dozens, that occurred amongst largely young Black men going back, a century. And the your mama joke was the foundational piece of that, right? So yes, family is off the table unless it's done so in a playful way. And obviously that's not what's occurring in this particular moment.
But do you think that's kind of a consequence of how much music there is out there and how much noise you have to cut through?
Oh, there's no question of that, right? You have to, it has to be spectacular, right? No one necessarily cares about how great that you can rap. No one cares about, how great your beats are. Yeah, I mean, that's matter. That's why folks have been listening to Not Like Us for the last year. But at the same time, right, you have to cut through the noise. And one of the ways that you cut through the noise is really trying to take somebody's heart out.
Now, Drake's filed this lawsuit not against Kendrick, which he highlights quite clearly, but against Universal Music Group, the parent company of his record label and Kendrick's record label. Whether it could actually amount to him censoring Kendrick ultimately is a different conversation. But before he filed it, he says in the filing that UMG told him, don't file this lawsuit. It's going to be embarrassing. It's not going to be well received by the culture. Do you think that was sound advice?
I think it was. He essentially, right, in the world of hip hop is a snitch. Right? When crews had beefs and quote unquote black gangsters had beefs, they didn't go to the cops to work through the beefs, right? They worked through whatever avenues they had to work through. So it was really strange, right, for him to go to the court. And I don't know what the end game can be, right, in this context. It is not going to restore Drake's reputation, right, as a person. It's not going to restore his reputation as a best-selling rap artist, right? That only happens if he continues to make good music, which quite frankly, he hasn't done a lot of lately. If you're looking at it from Drake, I think there are many folks who look at what he did as a weak response to the fact that, in the words of Jay-Z and Nas, he was totally ethered.
Professor Neal, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Now I'm back with our resident criminal defense attorney from South Carolina, Shaun Kent. Hi, Shaun.
Good to be back. Thank you.
This confuses me a little bit. So Drake's filed this lawsuit not against Kendrick Lamar, who he's famously beefing with, but against UMG. That's the parent company of the labels that both him and Kendrick are signed to. he says that Universal Music Group released this song that included the claims he was a paedophile, which of course it did, certified paedophile. They never believed he was a paedophile and that they knew this content would be defamatory. He says, aside from green lighting the release of the song, they also artificially boosted it. So these are some of the accusations he's making in this lawsuit. And then he throws in this, well, his lawyers threw it in, but it's a little, unlike any other song ever released by Kendrick Lamar, this song has been played billions of times, which is also true. This song is massive. UMG, Universal Music Group, say Drake is being misled by his legal representatives into taking one absurd legal step after another. In a letter to the court this month, the company's CEO, Lucian Grange, called the lawsuit farcical. Now, I've read a few of these now. You know, me in a civil lawsuit, we go together. I call you.
You understand defamation now. It seems like it's everywhere.
I can read a civil claim. This one was set out, I thought, very coherently. It was, this is what they've alleged. This is how they did it. And then it gave a few different reasons for motive, which I don't always see in a civil claim. So he's saying that the content of the song is defamatory. Do you agree with that?
Yes, it is what's called defamation per se. There are certain things under the law that if you just say them, they are defamatory. If you talk about somebody's work, their job, if you like they own a business, something poorly about that. If you say that somebody has committed a crime, those are things that we call defamation per se, which means if it is proven, the damages are assumed. Okay. Now, what makes it so you said, is it a defamatory comment? Absolutely. The argument that the record label is making is one of the elements to prove defamation per se is when it is said it is a factual or is being offered as a fact, as truth. Drake is saying you clearly are offering as a fact. The record label is saying this is a rap battle. Everybody knows that you guys are prone for hyperbole. As a matter of fact, Drake, you've been going back and forth with him all day long. Stop now all of a sudden pretending that anyone believes this stuff is truthful. Drake has fired back and said, this is the difference. You have put this song out to such a worldwide audience that has gone past the encapsulation of people who understand rap, that people outside of this spectrum are now thinking that I am a pedophile. They are shooting up my house. They are doing these things. You have now crossed into the actual malice standard because, let's make this clear, one of their claims is, we know this is actual malice because you guys, we were getting involved in contract negotiations. So if you can boost up old K-Dot's records and make me look worse, and then I am lower in the realm of scheme, then all of a sudden you can negotiate my extension a little bit differently. So that's the whole reason this was happening. You saw this as an opportunity. You put it out at the world that I am a pedophile. You know that this is false. You're pushing this out as a fact. It is going to hurt my reputation. It's going to make me less marketable. If I am less marketable, then you can make more money negotiating with me, and that is unfair, and that's the point of this lawsuit.
He outlines a few different ways that he alleges that they artificially boosted it. We hear a lot about using bots, but he talks about this practice called whitelisting, obviously the opposite of blacklisting, where they remove the rights restrictions on the songs. So what you get is YouTubers who can stream music, usually they can only do about 25 to 30 seconds. They could stream the whole track. So therefore there were more pieces of content that contained the song, which pushed it out everywhere. They've alleged that when you'd ask Siri to play Certified Lover Boy, Drake's album, it would take you to the Not Like Us song. They've alleged that they were going into partnerships with social media influencers, sort of backdoor partnerships in getting them to play the song. So that's his alleging of how they've artificially boosted it. But what I don't understand is you talk there about the rap battle and the artistry of it. How much can like artistic license protect them in saying we don't want to censor one of our artists, and that's what Drake is asking us to do?
Absolutely. I think this is the legal analysis and concepts that are going into this are more far-reaching than people think. Now, the judge may end up throwing this out and it all stops. But if this keeps going, the potential censorship that this could have on artists is massive. As you know, I try civil cases and criminal cases. I have tried criminal cases in which prosecution has offered rap lyrics against somebody on trial and saying, you mean those to be true. The stuff that you say in your rap lyrics are not hyperbolic. you mean this to be true? You are a murderer. You are a gun toter. You are these things. And the rapper's like, it's just literary license. If Drake's able to get a big decision that says the stuff that you put in your rap lyrics are true, it is going to have a chilling effect, I believe, on the rap genre, if you will, because the entire point of the rap genre is hyperbole. And that's what they're trying to say. If you look at artists such as 50 Cent, 50 Cent had a song called about how high, and he flat out says, I don't drink, I don't smoke. I just put that in there because it sounded incredibly cool and people love this stuff. Drake is saying, you knew these things were true. You're saying this stuff is true about me, Kendrick, and the rap and the industry is allowing you. If this keeps going, it will have a chilling effect on rap and artists and what they put it on and recording labels and so forth. It could be scary.
Now, you say there about defamation per se, which is on the lawsuit, and they don't need to have, as you'd say, cognizable damages for that because it's so defamatory that the damages are assumed. But they also have just defamation on there as well, and they do go quite some way in listing the damages. Specifically, 3 days after the release of the song, Drake is saying that as a direct consequence of that, people drove up to his house and actually managed to shoot his bodyguard. Now, that is, 3 days after. They didn't drive past his house and said, we're shooting you because of Not Like Us. They drove past and said, F Drake. But is that not an open and shut case? Like, you release this, it clearly was perceived as, it's defamatory enough that people believed it and then went as far as to try and wound him. And as a consequence of that, he's yanked his son out of school as well. So that it is affecting his life, and his bodyguard and friend was shot.
Absolutely. Damages would be presumed. One of the things that I have mentioned before that would be, though, interesting, and as Ty was saying, we started the back end, the damages, what has happened, things of that nature. Drake would have to sit for a deposition. And in sitting for a deposition, he could be asked any question that they want. As you understand, the definition of somebody who is a certified lover boy, certified pedophile, and some of the lyrics are, I hear you like them young, Drake. That has been something in the industry that people have talked about forever, that Drake dates incredibly young women and has in his past. If he sits for a deposition, will be asked about everyone young he has dated. Has he ever dated anyone who was a little close to the age? Truth is a defense to defamation. So if they can find one thing out there whatsoever in that song that is true, then the lawsuit goes away. And so that's something I've always said. Drake better be careful with all these pushing, because he must sit for a deposition and he can be asked about his dating life, his history, how young of women that he chooses to date. And then Kendrick and UMG can say, a lot of that stuff is kind of true. That's something to think about.
Now, in January, UMG issued a statement about the lawsuit. They said, throughout his career, Drake has intentionally and successfully used UMG to distribute his music and poetry to engage in conventionally outrageous back and forth rap battles to express his feelings about other artists. He now seeks to weaponize the legal process to silence an artist's creative expression and to seek damages from Universal for distributing that artist's music. In response to claims that Universal had deliberately harmed Drake's career, the label noted it had invested massively in his music, helping him achieve historic commercial and personal and financial success, which he has. I mean, he's top 5 for most people. He's one of the most commercially successful rappers on the planet. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this as it goes through and we see more. And if we get a deposition from Kendrick and Drake, ooh, that's primetime viewing. Thank you so much, Shaun.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
That was our resident criminal defense attorney, Shaun Kent, joining us from South Carolina. And that's it for this episode of Fame Under Fire from BBC Sounds with me, Anoushka Mutanda-Dougherty. Keep sending us your questions. You can get us on WhatsApp at +44 330 678 1114. That's +44 330 678 1114. Make sure you subscribe to the BBC Sounds YouTube channel so you never miss a thing.